could you give us a brief insight into Man of the New Millennium?
Man of the New Millennium is subtitled A Search for Us in an Age of Me. And it's also, it's encapsulated in a phrase which is that it is a plea for humanity in fictional dress. And a plea for humanity in fictional dress means that it is told through a story. It's not just a very dry academic piece of writing that it is a polemic or is preaching, or it is a discussion about where we are today, how we got to where we are today, and how best we're going to come out of it. And one of the fundamentals of that, I think, has got to be that we have to start thinking of ourselves in the first person plural and not in the first person singular. This credo of selfishness and of greed has just got to be stopped, and it's got to be, we've got to do a very rapid about turn on it, or otherwise I really do fear for our future. Having said that, I'm not fearful about our future. I think we are in an extremely serious situation, mankind, but I think that it is so serious that we are going to be forced to pull ourselves out of it, if necessary, by our own bootstraps. But what I am absolutely convinced about is that we have to do that. Nobody else is going to do it. It's our responsibility. We can't stop pointing at fingers at other people saying, why aren't they doing anything? We have to start accepting responsibility for it. And that has to start with just by accepting that it's our responsibility. Already, you notice there has been a very major shift in the thinking of what I would call vested interest, by which I mean big business, politics. 10 years ago, anybody who talked about the environment, we were all totally lunatic tree huggers. Now, oil companies certainly are trying to convince us over their ecological credentials. Governments are bending over backwards to prove how environmentally sound they are. We do change things when there is consensus. Of that, there's no question. And now we need that consensus to come to bring to bear on the entire ethic which informs our society and our world. I think that it is entirely legitimate to criticize politicians. In fact, I think we need to be doing a great deal more of it than we're doing, and not for the kind of trivial reasons that we do, that we don't like Gordon Brown's smile, or we don't like whatever. Let's get to policies, and let's get to actually not addressing big problems that we've got to deal with. And let's get to the fact that, we have tried, politicians have sought for years, for decades now, actually since the beginning of time, to spin their way out of problems. And, historically, that has been just about acceptable. It hasn't been very ethical, but it's just been just about acceptable. If we try to spin our way out of problems today, we're committing a form of suicide. It's just far too late. We're far too far down the line now to think that we can just pretend that problems don't exist, or that we can soundbite them away, or any of those other convenient things. Finally, governments do have to respond to public pressure. Even totalitarian governments have to respond to public pressure, because we can eventually make places ungovernable. And they have to realize that they're trying to convince us that's not the case any longer, but it is. It remains the case. And we have to start accepting that responsibility and start saying to ourselves, it's not just enough to criticize politicians, though that is very important. We also have to examine what is in us is allowing the politicians to get away with what they are doing. Why it is that we are voting for one politician against another. We still tend to vote because of things like income tax. Well, we might have to accept the fact that we're going to have to pay more income tax. But what I think we do is beholden on us is to make sure that tax is properly spent.
Yeah, sure.
On things where, on places like education and healthcare, where it desperately needs the money, and less on fighting wars in Iraq.
Yeah, sure. You mentioned that it's the book is as a narrative. Can you just give us a little sort of brief description of what that narrative is around?
The narrative is basically about a four-way relationship between three women and a man who happen to find themselves in London and who form a rather quixotic relationship between the four of them. One of the women is pregnant, and the relationship traces what happens to the four of them during the course of her pregnancy.
Right.
And it is a very gentle love story in the broadest sense of the word love. There is romance involved with it, but it's much more the love that a friend has for each other than the love that a lover has for his partner.
Yeah. Can I just, for other people like me, Greg, can I just use the word there, quixotic?
Oh, quixotic. Sorry, right, quixotic. A sort of rather whimsical, rather not the relationship that a slightly odd, slightly quirky relationship.
Right, brilliant. In the past, you've said that the God of the New Millennium developed as you wrote the Prophet of the New Millennium.
Yeah.
How did Man of the New Millennium develop?
Pretty much at the same time that God of the New Millennium developed. I suppose if I had to divide them into categories, I guess that Prophet sets down the guidelines. God talks about more of the spiritual element, and man talks more of the temporal element.
Right.
And I suppose that's how the three of them would be classified. That's not to say that God doesn't have elements in it of the political and economic and philosophical, or that man doesn't also have elements in it of the spiritual, and certainly of the spiritual in the broader sense of the word. But it does concern itself, Man of the New Millennium, more with the very with the basics that we're living through in life. And I have to say that in a previous draft, which I wrote a year ago, I predicted the recession that we're in at the moment, and I obviously had to go back and re-edit that, because I kept saying we are going to be in a situation that's a similar situation to that we're in today.
Right.
And then obviously I had to go back and edit it and say, well, this is the situation that we're in
Absolutely.
today. And I also think this is not the end of it. I think unless very radical steps are taken, and much more radical than are being discussed by G20 or any of the economists I hear talking about, or by the World Bank or the International Monetary Fund, unless really severely radical alternatives are found, I think this is only the rehearsal for the big recession that's coming.
Really?
Now, I'm not an economist, and I don't pretend to be, and nor am I a scientist, and I don't pretend to be that either. But I certainly can understand quite a lot of the aspirations of quantum scientists today. And I just think that economics is falling very far behind in that field. We're still talking about Milton Friedman's School of Economics, the Chicago School as it's known, which is a school of great cruelty and not to say viciousness. And I think that we need very new paradigms, particularly economically. And, I also believe what Gandhi said, that economics has to be subservient to social needs. It's got to be the slave of social needs, not the master.
Sure. If you could choose one line from the book to show to the world, which would it be?
Again, as with all, when you've asked me this question about the other two books in the trilogy, I would say the subtitle. The book is certainly not suggesting that these are the solutions, but it is suggesting that these are the questions that we need to ask ourselves. It's suggesting that these are avenues perhaps where solutions could be found by other people considerably brainier than I am. But I don't think there is a shortage of brains in this world. I think we have got fantastic brains in this world. What I think there is a shortage of desire, of really genuine desire to change the way in which we think and in which we live.